The December wind howled down Ridgefield's main avenue, rattling neon signs and pushing late-night drifters toward the promise of warmth. John Miller, a 34-year-old single father and night-shift rideshare driver, idled at a red light, glancing at the baby monitor app on his phone. His 6-year-old daughter, Ella, slept peacefully under a fort of stuffed animals at home, guarded by Mrs. Diaz from next door. John's breath fogged the windshield as he spotted a woman in an ivory cocktail dress stumbling from a shuttered wine bar. She clutched her heels, mascara streaking down her cheeks, clearly more intoxicated than she realized. The city could be merciless to the vulnerable at 2 a.m., and John's conscience refused to let him drive on. He eased to the curb, rolled down the window, and offered calm reassurance. "Ma'am, let me get you somewhere safe." Her glazed eyes met his with fragile confusion before she nodded, surrendering to exhaustion. He unlocked the rear door, but the woman's balance faltered. Instinctively, John rounded the car, steadying her with practiced gentleness. The scent of expensive perfume mingled with the sharp bite of spilled Pinot on her dress. She mumbled something about a driver who had vanished and an important meeting. Rather than risk an address she might misremember, John guided her to the all-night Willowbrook Diner, a well-lit refuge 2 blocks away. Neon blues and chromed edges glinted as he ushered her into a booth, signaling the waitress for black coffee and water. Under fluorescent light, the stranger's features sharpened, mid-30s. Confidence embedded in her posture even through haze. She sipped water with trembling hands while John discreetly stepped aside to call a local hotel, arranging a room on his own debit card. It wasn't extravagance, it was decency, something he hoped Ella would one day understand simply by example. When he returned, the woman's coffee sat untouched, steam curling into oblivion. Her eyelids drooped, but her voice steadied just enough to whisper a name that caught him off guard. Olivia. No surname, no title. John introduced himself with quiet politeness and slid the coffee closer. Olivia grimaced at her reflection in the dark liquid, murmuring regrets about the charity gala she'd chaired slipping into fiasco after her driver disappeared. John offered no judgment. He printed directions to the nearby Crestview Hotel, escorted her back to his car, and checked her in under his own name so paparazzi or worse couldn't trace her. The front desk clerk watched the exchange with raised eyebrows, yet John's matter-of-fact tone stifled questions. After ensuring Olivia was settled with bottled water and aspirin, he left his number on the bedside table just in case she needed anything before dawn, then slipped into the corridor as silently as he'd arrived. By sunrise, boardrooms across the city buzzed with anticipation of a high-stakes acquisition rumored for weeks. John, meanwhile, returned home, brewed cocoa for Ella, and walked her to first grade before heading to his day job at Franklin Auto Works. Grease beneath his nails and a timing belt replacement waiting, he kept the midnight episode compartmentalized, chalking it up to common courtesy. At noon, while tightening a stubborn bolt, his phone flashed an unknown number. Olivia's voice, clear, composed, and unmistakably sober, thanked him for the rescue and requested lunch. John hesitated. Lunches cost money. He budgeted for Ella's braces, but a free hour and leftover sandwich wouldn't derail finances, so he agreed to meet at the Magnolia Cafe. Unaware reporters were orbiting the venue like moths to a lighthouse. Olivia arrived dressed in tailored charcoal, eyes bright with a purpose. Over coffee this time she drank it, she confessed her full identity. Olivia Grant, CEO of Helios Mobility, the region's fastest-growing tech conglomerate. John almost spilled his tea. Helios ads plastered every bus in town, promising greener transit solutions. Their executive suite existed in a stratosphere far above spark plugs and brake pads. Olivia, however, leaned forward, voice lowered, and revealed she'd been searching for him long before last night. Weeks earlier, Ella's Elementary had hosted a science fair where John's improvised solar-powered go-kart prototype, built from scrap to teach his daughter resilience, caught Helios engineers' attention. A photo circulated internally. Olivia ordered her team to find the designer, impressed by ingenuity on a shoestring budget. Irony intervened when she stumbled drunk into his life before introductions. She slid an envelope across the table. An offer letter for a senior prototype specialist role, salary quadruple his current wage, full medical coverage, and flexible hours for single-parent responsibilities. John's heart pounded like a misfiring piston. He remembered rent overdue, Ella's dentist calling, and his dream of finishing the mechanical engineering degree abandoned when her mother left. Doubt shadowed excitement. Corporate promises sometimes unraveled faster than serpentine belts. John voiced concern about culture fit, imposter syndrome, and childcare logistics. Olivia listened without interruption, fingertips steepled. She explained Helios's new initiative, community-powered innovation labs aimed at elevating practical inventors. The company needed minds unencumbered by corporate echo chambers. She'd watched John navigate crisis with humility, and that, she said, was rarer than code. If he accepted, Helios would sponsor night classes to complete his degree. The envelope also contained a scholarship form for Ella's STEM summer camp. John's pragmatic side wrestled with distrust born of past layoffs, but Olivia's sincerity radiated. Still, he requested 48 hours. She nodded, slid her business card over, and left with a handshake firm as forged steel, cameras capturing. None of it her PR team had been instructed to stand down. That evening, John spread bills across the kitchen table like battle plans. Ella colored next to him, oblivious to decimal points dictating futures. He envisioned a life where payday loans disappeared, where he could design energy-efficient vehicles rather than patch failing ones. Yet fear lingered. What if corporate politics chewed him up? He phoned Olivia, probing for probation clauses and severance terms. She answered every question transparently, as though risk mitigation were a shared puzzle. Her final words disarmed him. John, leadership shouldn't hide behind jargon. We either lift good people or we fail shareholders in the long run. He hung up trembling, not from anxiety, but because hope, after years in storage, rattled loudly when unboxed. He tucked Ella in, whispered possibilities, and drafted a polite resignation to Franklin Auto Works, scheduling it unsent. Sleep proved elusive. Dawn found him running math on a whiteboard, charting mileage reimbursement and college course loads. 40. 7 hours after lunch, John stepped into Helios's innovation wing, an industrial cathedral of glass and aluminum where prototypes hovered in 3D. Printers and drones danced like metallic swallows. Olivia greeted him wearing safety goggles, gesturing toward a vacant workstation by a solar drivetrain still warm from testing. Paperwork complete, badges printed, John donned a lab coat over grease-stained t-shirt. Prestige mattered less than progress. Over the next weeks, he retrofitted his go-kart design into a low-cost urban mobility pod, capturing national headlines when Helios launched it at a veterans rehabilitation center. Reporters fixated on the fairy tale narrative. Single dad mechanic turned lead engineer under visionary CEO. Olivia deflected praise toward John. He redirected it to his late father's toolset and Ella's endless questions. The partnership flourished, rooted in mutual respect rather than savior complex. Paychecks erased debts, and nights once spent juggling gigs now hosted bedtime calculus sessions with Ella giggling through square roots. Asterisk sets inevitably attract storms. Industry. Competitors questioned Helios's hiring rigor, whispering that a mechanic lacked pedigree. Stock analysts sniffed at sentimental leadership. Olivia responded by unveiling quarterly growth figures outpacing projections, crediting frontline thinkers like John Miller. During Q&A, she acknowledged her own misstep, using alcohol to mask burnout the night John intervened. She announced a company-wide wellness initiative, pledging funding for addiction counseling and Safe Ride. Programs policies forged from personal failure transformed into institutional strength. Critics found themselves disarmed by a vulnerability seldom displayed at podiums. John, watching from backstage, realized heroism wasn't flamboyant. It was iterative, like torquing bolts incrementally until wheels aligned. After the conference, he thanked Olivia for both transparency and opportunity. She countered, "We don't thank each other for doing the right thing, we just keep doing it." One rainy Saturday, Ella tugged John's sleeve at the local park, pointing at a shiny limousine idling near the playground. The driver approached with an envelope addressed to Ella Miller. Inside lay 2 front-row tickets to the city's robotics expo and a handwritten note from Olivia. "Every engineer deserves a front seat to possibility. See you there, assistant designer." The limo whisked them to the expo where Ella, badge clipped proudly, showcased the mini-pod to children with mobility challenges. Camera flashes recorded her demonstration, but it was the quiet gratitude in parents' eyes that etched deepest. John watched his daughter beam, recognizing the full circle. A single act of safeguarding a stranger had evolved into safeguarding futures he'd never imagined. Months later, in Helios's sunlit courtyard, John unveiled the Aurora Initiative and internship pipeline connecting high school mechanics to sustainable design careers. Olivia stood beside him, not as a benefactor but as a collaborator. The board noted record employee engagement. Investors cheered soaring stocks. Yet the moment's gravity settled in more intimate beats. A CEO who once stumbled found her compass in a driver's integrity. A single father whose limits were dictated by circumstance now redrew them daily. Their handshake sealed not just a program but a philosophy, sometimes the shortest route to transformation is kindness delivered without expectation. As reporters dispersed, Ella raced up, hugging John's leg, excitement spilling about tomorrow's science fair. He lifted her high, eyes meeting Olivia's across the crowd, both acknowledging that destiny isn't a grand design etched in marble. It's a series of decisions made in fleeting instants, like stopping a car at 2 a.m. that can pivot lives, companies and communities toward a brighter horizon.